If a bottle promises B12 for all-day energy, treat that as marketing, not physiology. Vitamin B12 is essential, but essential is not the same as stimulatory. When status is adequate, adding more rarely feels like caffeine. Where B12 earns its reputation is quieter work, building healthy red blood cells, supporting DNA synthesis, and protecting nerve myelin so oxygen delivery and signal conduction stay intact.
Okay, but if someone feels wiped out and a friend says take B12, how do we know whether that advice is smart or just noise? Tiredness is everywhere. Is low B12 a common enough cause that the energy claim keeps coming back? Or are we mostly watching placebo and coincidence?
Here is the honest energy pathway. Your body needs B12 to make enough healthy red blood cells. Those cells carry oxygen. When B12 runs low for long enough, anemia can show up as fatigue, pale skin, shortness of breath on effort, or lightheadedness. Correct the deficiency in oxygen delivery can improve, which can feel like energy returning. That is restoration, not a bonus turbo mode for people who are never deficient. The second high-value job is neurologic. Long-standing low B12 can damage nerves. People may notice numbness or tingling in hands and feet, balance trouble, concentration problems, irritability, or more severe mental status changes in extreme cases. That is why B12 is framed as nerve protection in clinical teaching. It helps maintain myelin and neural function, and deficiency correction can reduce that neurologic risk when caught in time.
Every explainer video makes absorption sound like an obstacle course. Stomach acid, intrinsic factor, then the small intestine. Why does that pipeline matter more than just buying a bigger pill? If the pipe is blocked, does oral B12 still help? Or is that where shots enter the story?
Exactly. If the main problem is low intake, as with a strict vegan pattern and no fortified foods, oral B12 can resolve it. If the stomach no longer makes intrinsic factor or surgery removed key stomach or intestinal segments, absorption fails even when food looks fine on paper. In those settings, clinicians often use injections, sometimes frequent at first, then maintenance. Some people do well with high-dose oral regimens or nasal spray under medical guidance.
So who should treat B12 as a planning nutrient instead of an energy experiment? I keep hearing vegans, older adults, metformin users, and people after weight loss surgery. Are those the highest yield groups? And is plant-forward eating automatically a B12 problem?
Plant-forward eating can be excellent, but reliable B12 mostly comes from animal foods or fortified products. A large 2026 synthesis of the Eat Lancet Planetary Health Diet warned that global average adoption could induce adult deficiencies in B12, calcium, iron, and zinc if those gaps are ignored. That does not condemn the diet. It means vegans and near-vegans need a deliberate B12 plan, fortified foods, a supplement, or both, rather than hoping leafy greens will cover it.
Quick boundary check before we go further. If someone already has tingling feet, weird balance, or brain fog they are blaming on B12, should they just start a high-dose bottle tonight? Or is that the moment to stop self-treating and get examined?
Post-bariatric care is another high-signal setting. A 2026 Aeromedical review of long-term bariatric outcomes repeatedly flagged chronic micronutrient gaps, especially vitamin B12, iron, copper, and vitamin D, with neurologic complications reported in a meaningful minority. Metformin and long-term acid-reducing medicines also appear in deficiency cause lists. In those contexts, B12 is surveillance and replacement medicine, not an optional energy booster.
If someone still eats eggs, dairy, fish, or meat, do they need a supplement at all? And when public health programs fortify flour or salt with B12, is that actually moving blood levels? Or is fortification mostly a theory that sounds good on paper?
Fortification can improve status. In Punjab, preschoolers getting quintuply fortified salt for 12 months had higher serum B12 and folate than kids on iodized salt alone. That is useful public health evidence. Separately, a randomized Ethiopian trial of B9 and B12 fortified corn flour in teenage girls did not improve primary cognitive scores over 6 months. Raising intake is not the same as unlocking sharper thinking in people who are not selected for clinical deficiency. Heart health marketing sometimes rides along with B vitamins because they can lower homocysteine. A 2026 meta-analysis in coronary heart disease found combined folic acid, B6, and B12 reduced serum homocysteine and lowered vascular restenosis risk. Yet major cardiovascular events and cardiovascular mortality were not clearly improved. So lab markers can move while heart outcomes stay uncertain. Do not buy B12 as a standalone heart attack preventer.
I have also heard that high folate can hide some B12 deficiency signs. What does that mean in real life? If someone takes a big B complex with lots of folic acid, could their blood counts look less alarming while nerves are still getting hurt?
How should someone judge whether B12 is helping? First, define the target. If the target was deficiency, look for the right labs and the right symptoms. Serum B12, and when needed, methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, blood counts, plus clinical follow-up for neuropathy or anemia signs. If energy was the only complaint and baseline status was fine, a dramatic stimulant-like lift was never a fair expectation. Change the expectation to adequacy and risk reduction, not buzz.
Product aisle question: cyanocobalamin tablets, methylcobalamin gummies, sprays, shots. Does the form name matter as much as influencers claim, or should people mostly obsess over whether they can absorb any form and whether a clinician confirmed they need it?
Medication and absorption context is a clinician boundary. Long-term metformin, chronic antacids, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, pernicious anemia antibodies, or prior gastric surgery change both risk and the testing plan. Those are not moments for influencer dosing charts. Get examined. Measure B12 with the adjunct markers your clinician chooses, and let the cause dictate whether food fortification, pills, or injections are the durable fix.
Give me the clean decision rule. When is B12 clearly worth planning for, and when should someone stop expecting an energy upgrade from another bottle?
One last proportion note. Inherited remethylation disorders are rare and managed with specialist protocols, sometimes including high-dose parenteral hydroxycobalamin. That world should not be imported into everyday supplement culture. For ordinary viewers, the responsible frame stays simpler. Prevent or correct common deficiency, respect neurologic red flags, and avoid turning B12 into a cure-all for fatigue, fertility, dry eye, or heart events where evidence is weak or mixed. So the takeaway is blunt on purpose. Vitamin B12 is high value when intake or absorption is the weak link because blood and nerve biology depend on it. It is low value as an energy hack when stores are already fine. Plan it for vegans, older adults, metformin or post-bariatric contexts, and confirmed deficiency. Skip the fantasy that another tablet manufactures motivation.